Welcome to The Dependence, a podcast of conversations about how our dependence on forces outside of ourselves can help or hinder our growth in our lives. My name is Jamie Adams, and I hope you enjoy your time here. But yeah, I've got a little cachetta behind me. I got my grandfather pictures from baseball back in the day.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Just
Yeah.
waking up. Ran over to our storage place, digging through gear. Um, as we got started on these rehearsals, just trying to figure out what we need and what we don't need, and showing up with a bunch of stuff and trying to reconfigure everything.
Yeah.
It's not my normal setup. So yeah, just trying to find a bunch of stuff and order a bunch of stuff. And I have a drum tech that's not here yet.
Okay.
He's showing up on the 20th or the 19th or the 20th.
Is that somebody you've worked with in the past?
No, everybody is brand new. This whole thing, for the guys, really, other than Tash and I, they've known each other for 35 years, maybe 30 years, so
right.
For them, this is kind of like a reunion, and they're recalling a bunch of stuff from, old times, and, what happened back then, and sharing old photos and all this other stuff. And Tash is bringing in this New York energy, and really adding a lot to, in addition to the songs that we did on the record, is just a lot of other blues tunes in his own repertoire that we can pull from too.
Yeah.
And he's killing it on vocals too. So that's been a very cool thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yesterday I was talking to someone, and for some reason I remembered, as we were just talking about Cashada a few minutes ago, where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I was a kid, we only had like 3 TV stations, right? 3 TV channels, right? There was no cable when I was really young. So we had, NBC, ABC, and CBS.
Right.
And on NBC in the mornings, on Saturday mornings, they had music videos. So we didn't have MTV, but they would like run these music videos, right? And there were a handful of music videos that were always on that I just immediately was fascinated by. One was that song from Def Leppard called "Animal." Do you remember that song?
Right. Yeah.
Off Hysteria.
Yeah.
And then another, the other was "Sweet Child of Mine."
Yeah.
And I was talking about just remembering these videos yesterday, and I was like, wow, man, if you'd have told me when I was like 8 years old or 7 years old watching Slash play guitar on "Sweet Child of Mine," and then now at 40, almost 44, you told me that I'm 1 degree of separation in my personal life from Slash, I would have been like, no way.
I know. I'm, you and me both.
I'd have been like, wait a minute. One of my closest friends is like now playing in a band with Slash from Guns N' Roses. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so
you and me both.
let's start there. So how did that happen? Like, how did you end up on this record with Slash? So Slash just released this new album called Orgy the Damned. It's a bunch of old. I guess it's his take or y'all's take on a lot of old blues standards, and then kind of an original song that he wrote that's kind of in a blues format. But how did this happen?
I tell people all the time, I'm just doing what I do, working, playing drums, and just trying to stay busy. And I was working, ironically, on a blues record with this young woman from Sardinia. And she's a blues guitarist and singer-songwriter. And while we were working on that record at my buddy Will Golden's down at our studio, Mike Klink sends me this text. And Mike Klink is a well-known producer who did Guns N' Roses album. He did Appetite for Destruction back in the day, along with so many other bands from that time. And I literally thought it was spam something didn't look right. It was a text. I was being inundated with spam and scam text
Yeah.
every day.
Right.
So the wording in it, I brushed over it. I was busy. My head was in that, in the record. So, um, I looked at it, didn't do anything about it. It was a day later that I looked at it again, and the wording was just a little different. My mind was a little bit more focused on the text. And I thought, well, I'll just call this number back. I've been calling these numbers back anyway to tell them to take me off the call list. Anyway, I'll do the same here. And Mike Klink picks up the phone and I call him and he's like, "Oh, hi. Hi, Michael. Thanks for calling me back." And I was like, okay, this isn't a scam. And I apologize for taking a day to respond. But he just went into the situation. They had to let go of their drummer that they had been working with for years and rehearsing with to do a new album. And it wasn't working out. It wasn't gelling the way that they had hoped, or it wasn't the right thing for this particular record. And so it sent Slash and company on a scramble to try to find somebody else. And he had been talking to his friend Jimmy Vivino, a blues guitarist and MD for like Conan O'Brien show and many other things. He had suggested, he kind of put me on his list, unbeknownst to me, which was really cool. And just that's what prompted Mike Klink and Slash to reach out. And yeah, from there it was just like, listen, we've got a record. We're going to be in the studio by the end of the week. Is there any way you can come in, and help us out over the next couple of weeks? And I said, sure. We got this and that. And he goes, let me call you back, because I said there's 2 dates I have to do in the middle of it. And he's like, let me call you back. And
Wait,
calls me back.
you mean like shows or other commitments you had?
I had other commitments and other shows. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, let me check with the guy. Mike Klink was like, let me check with the guys and see what's up. And I thought, well, that's the last I'll hear of him on that. And I went back to work. And he calls back like 30 minutes later and said, the guys are cool. I'm like, what guys? Because at this point, he hasn't even told me.
Oh, so you don't know anything about the project at the time?
I don't know anything about it. I've been asked to play drums for someone, and someone recommended me. So I was going to say yes to whomever it was that recommended, because of whoever recommended me.
Yeah.
And so then he was like, can you start tomorrow? And I said, sure. Maybe I should get some music and, so I could start learning. It doesn't sound like I have much time. And he goes, yeah, and I should probably tell you who this is for. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, the artist is Slash, and we're working on a blues album. And it's it'll be a collection of covered songs, people like Howlin' Wolf and Freddie King and all your just deep cut blues and trends that, Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson, that these people have all done these songs. It came from the heart and soul of American music,
Yeah.
And we were going to do our take with it. And so I had met up with the guys. I played on a Sunday, and then the next day, Monday, they didn't need me, and I thought, well, that was a great opportunity, regardless of what happens. And I'm saying all this stuff. I said, well, I'll go ahead and say goodbye, just in case this is goodbye. And Slash is looking at me laughing, like, what are you even talking about? But I gathered all my stuff and took it, and just was really, grateful for the opportunity. And they were all kind of looking at each other. It's like, look, they're thinking we're just going to get through tomorrow so that we can get back to work this guy. And
so they were. Was it kind of like an audition then? Was that number one? You just kind of going in and just playing to see how it felt?
Yeah, I think they needed to know, is this recommendation even going to work?
Yeah.
And I think it was probably about 4 bars in, and I you can catch Slash and Johnny Grippick, the bass player, wonderful bass player, just easy chemistry and just locks in the groove, super, super cool. And they just look at each other and kind of smile. And I'm not sure I wasn't sure what that meant, but it felt positive. So after that song, Slash just kind of went, well, that worked, and it was a really positive situation.
Yeah.
But the next day it was Johnny told me later. I was like, well, who came in on Monday? And he goes, oh, uh, it was Chamberlain. I was like, Matt Chamberlain? And he was like, yeah, Matt Chamberlain. I was like, ah.
Yeah.
I was like,
He's
well, first of
pretty
all,
good.
he's all right.
He's
But
pretty good.
I've only been watching him since I was 17 years old. And,
Yeah.
and really, really admiring and appreciating everything he's done in his career. And, watching him in Deep Ellum in Dallas.
Oh, that's right.
Tech,
He's a Texas guy. Right? Is he a UNT guy?
he's actually a Californian. He's actually from SoCal, but
Okay.
he, with the New Bohemians in North Texas University,
Oh,
it put him in that scene as well. It
I
put
see.
him in that scene of the 1 o'clock in the lab bands up in North Texas. It
Mm.
put him amongst a whole host of drummers that I was lucky enough to watch growing up and absorb from. So,
well, then he spent some time in Pearl Jam early in that, right after the 10 record, right after the first Pearl Jam record.
Absolutely. I mean, the list is long. I think he was on the Wallflower records.
Yeah. Tori Amos. Spent a lot of time with Tori Amos.
Toured with Tori probably for 3 albums. Those tours and those records are incredible.
Yeah.
He was with Critters Buggin' up in Seattle. He was with, all sorts of bands out of North Texas. He would play on Fry Street, do the Fry Street fairs up in Denton.
Yeah.
And he'd play with Earl Harvin and Mike Dillon. And it was just, the list is long. And so I avoid that, but it's incredible.
Yeah, so
I felt incredibly lucky to go.
Yes, you're in on Sunday. You're in on Sunday. It goes well, but then on you find out the Monday crew is, oh yeah, we played with Matt Chamberlain.
And I'm thinking, man,
I know you. Your head is immediately like, well, that was a good time, but I'm clearly not going to be the guy for this gig.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I was like, if Matt Chamberlain's on the gig, he's got the gig as far as I'm concerned. But, like in many ways, I mean, I think they were just trying to figure out what's the right feel for this project. And they decided, lucky for me, they decided that this guy's I'm the right feel for it.
Yeah.
So I was really happy about that. So on Tuesday, we just really started digging into the tunes, and what was 5 tunes quickly became 10 tunes. But Matt did play on the one original song on the record. I'm on all the other tunes, and Matt plays drums on the song Metal Chestnut.
Okay.
But it's funny when I listen to Matt, I hear all of the drummers from that time out of North Texas. We all kind of have, subtle, but the same stylings and the same thing. We have the same instincts,
Yeah.
So when I listen to him, it's not really much of a learning curve to go in and play it like that. It's something I would have done. I probably would have come up with myself, so that was really cool. And it's just great to, I think Matt lives right around the corner from me, and it's funny. It's great that we're both on this record, and we've known each other for so long.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the guy that recommended you then for this gig, Jimmy Davino, is that his name?
Vivino, yeah.
Vivino,
Jimmy
okay.
Vivino, yeah.
And what's the relationship? Like why did he recommend you? I mean, of all the people, like why you? Have you talked about that with him?
And all I did with Jimmy, I guess the short answer would be we jammed together. The first time we came across one another, Richard Thompson, who I've been working for like past 25 years, he played a Conan O'Brien show after Conan had left New York and moved to Los Angeles and started his production company, media company. We played his show, and Jimmy Vivino was the music director for his band.
Got it.
So we talked then, and and it was a good, I think he was he was definitely appreciative of Richard and a fan of Richard's, and he just really thought the band was super cool and appreciated what I was doing then. Fast forward years later, I was working with my buddy Tree Adams, who does a lot of music for CSI shows
Yeah.
and I did the music for Californication and does lots of TV.
Yeah.
We he had been asked to MD a fundraiser benefit down in Anaheim and for the crew during the pandemic, post pandemic.
Yeah.
Everyone was paying attention to the musicians, but the crew, the people who support the bands and touring and the music front of house and your stage gears and your setup and everything was kind of left out of the conversation a little bit. And so we did a fundraiser for them called Philo First In and Last Out benefit. And it had like people like David Crosby on it. It had all these heavyweights doing it. And that day, Jimmy Vivino brought in his project, and he had Steve Perkins playing with him for that. But
Jane's
before
Addiction.
that, Jane's Addiction drummer. But before that, Jimmy kind of sat in with us and Tree Adams Band. And so we kind of became the house band for several bands. And Jimmy sat in with us and jammed with us that afternoon. So I'm assuming that not only had he seen me play, but now he had a chance to play with me. So and I guess he figured it felt good and he appreciated it. So I'm thinking that's where the recommendation came from. But after, I remember in rehearsals, I asked, while we were preparing to do the record, I asked Slash, well, who recommended me? And he said, Jimmy Vivino, and I was like, oh man, I got to give him a call. So I reached out to him and said, I just want to thank you for the recommendation. I appreciate it. And he responded with a Jimmy Vivino response, which was like, hey man, I wouldn't steer you wrong, you know. Hey
So
man.
he's not in the band then? He's not part of this group?
No, Jimmy's doing his own thing. And
so why did Slash ask him for like what's the relationship there? Like why? Or
Slash knows a lot of people. And I think they're friends.
Okay.
And same circles, same, guitar guys and heavyweights, and Slash put the word out, and Jimmy came back with a response, and lucky for me, I was on the list.
Yeah. So see, how long have you been in LA now?
Man, 24 years now.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Like October will be 24 years.
And I know we're gonna kind of work backwards in order here, but from North Texas, from the Dallas area to LA.
Yeah.
So 24 years there, and you've been a professional musician, a working musician that entire time. How much of your kind of success and longevity and ability to just sustain a career as a professional musician living in LA, how much of that success do you kind of credit to the relationships that you've built with people, and not just being a great musician, but actually being a genuinely good human being and a good guy to be around? Like how much has that kind of played into your ability to get opportunities like you've got with Slash, but just other gigs that you've been able to use to sustain your lifestyle and support you and your wife as a professional musician? Like how much of that is a credit to just, this podcast is called The Dependence. So like your ability to really lean into those relationships and be recommended for things. Like how do you think about that?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, that's something that we're, is a daily learning exercise and experience of trying to figure out and hone in on. But I think it's all of the above of kind of the points that you mentioned. I mean, there's the adage that you're only as good as your last gig in this business, and it really just means that when someone recommends you or you have an opportunity to do something, you really need to meet the demand. You really need to rise to the occasion and do your absolute best to be that person that facilitates why you were actually asked to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
When you show up, just try to do your best, be professional about it. Try to be respectful of the people that are around you, that are also taking part in the project. To show up for a session, try to be there, try to be on time. There's
Yep.
other people waiting for you. There's other people who are taking time out of their schedules to do it as well. We're all working. We all know we're trying to make a living doing it.
Yeah.
So things run much smoother when you show the artist that's hiring you the respect of being there on time, and then furthermore showing them that you actually took the time to learn their music.
Yeah.
And they're hiring you for a reason. So show up, be you, and do the best being you. But rise to the occasion, meet the demand,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all a super part. And you mentioned, I mean, the more you can get along with someone, the better your personalities gel.
Yeah.
And the more enthusiasm you might show in the project, and that you at least care, even if you're struggling to really get what that artist wants. Show that you care, show that you really want to try to get this figured out.
Right.
And you'll always come out. That leaves a lasting impression. All of the above leave lasting impressions.
Yeah.
On the people that hire, and that word spreads. It just spreads, and people will just look. I'm telling you, even if he's not the right guy for this, you're gonna really enjoy being around it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll have fun. You'll be able to use something. You'll just have fun. You'll have a good day. So all of those things matter. They're important.
Okay. So I'm going to go way back now. And I don't want you to overthink this question, but I know you started playing drums, or at least, hitting things when you were, as young as 2 or 3, because we've talked a lot about that in the past. But what is your first memory of playing drums?
Wow. Well, the first memory is they weren't actually drums. Unfortunately, it was my mother's baby grand piano with her, and I took rhythm sticks because she was a classically trained pianist.
Yep.
And music teacher for her entire life. And I remember she had rhythm sticks. Rhythm sticks are something you can hand out to your students so that they can experience keeping time and learning about rhythm. And and I took those 2 sticks and a pair and started whacking on each piano key I could see. And I just remember the sound that it made when I hit each key, and it was the click it made and the note that it would make and the chime that it would make. All 3 sounds were happening. And I remember just being really intrigued on how different those sounds would be depending on how hard or light I would hit the key. So I'm experiencing all these things, and I'm probably 3.5, 4 years old.
Okay.
And I just remember my mother screaming from the kitchen. She was on the phone, and she goes, "Hang on a second, Mike, stop!" And I just turned around. I was like, I think, as a child, you hear stop, but that means just play lighter. So I started playing lighter. She came back there, took the sticks away from me. And, you got a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old in there that's, you got to just take stuff out of their hands and send them on their way to do something else. But it was right after that Christmas, I remember she went to like Kmart or something and got me a drum set. And I proceeded to destroy that in probably 4 or 5 minutes. And then she was like, "I got to get this boy a real kit," And so that's from 5 years old on, I had, something a little bit more weighty and sturdy to play.
Got it. A lot of our friends of mine that are real musicians, like yourself. A lot of them that get into it, despite where they may end up landing, like being a guitar player or drummer, their parents typically, the stories I hear is parents also usually make you take piano lessons first. So your mom's a classically trained pianist. Was there like hey, you can be a drummer, but you're going to learn the piano first, or you're going to learn the piano as well? Did you have to go through that?
Absolutely. She
Okay.
goes, you won't listen. She tried desperately to try to give me lessons along with everybody else in the neighborhood and in school districts that would come through the house in those days. And she says, I remember taking from her like 2 years or so. And then she was like, I was like, I just want to play drums. And she was like, all right, well, you're going to take 2 years of piano before you play drums. I was
Okay.
like, I was like, what is this piano thing? And I was probably about 6 years old when I started taking lessons, and she goes, you got to take 2 years. I remember, I just remember it being a means to an end. I don't even remember my teacher. I just remember going to these rehearsals or to these lessons.
Yeah.
Just so that I could get to drums. It was 2 years. I can't even believe that it was 2 years. But I must have done something. I don't know what I was doing. But that's where time folded until I was about 6 years old, and I started finally playing the drums with a teacher. And my mother got her master's degree at Wichita State University. And that was my playground when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was being watched by the students of the drum professor in the drum department. And I had access to these rooms filled with every kind of percussion instrument you could imagine. And it was just like I'd be up there for hours, by myself, just seeing what all of these different instruments sounded like and what they would sound like, quiet and loud, or timpanis and xylophones and marimbas and glockenspiels and snare, all the drums.
Yeah.
And I just had the opportunity finally to take these drum lessons. But to this day, I think there was a conspiracy for some reason, because I think my mother must have talked to the drum teacher and said, listen, he won't listen to me and he won't stick with piano. So I need put him on an instrument where he has to continue his scales. Because I'm not kidding. The first day I'm on a marimba. I hear it as I think I finally made it to play to play drums. And by drums I meant I wanted to play the drum set. I wanted to play kit.
Yeah.
But instead I got this little step stool in front of me. I have to climb up to this marimba I couldn't even reach. And the next thing I know, I'm doing scales on a marimba for an hour.
Wow.
And preparing for a recital, playing George Benson's Breezin' before I could move to a snare drum. And then I was on a snare drum for an hour. And for the last 5 minutes of every rehearsal, of every lesson, I would be allowed to play a few beats on a drum set. And
wow.
it was finally, I don't know, about 4 to 6 months into the lessons, I finally was just like, I can play drums too, like that to my teacher. He goes, oh, I know.
Yeah.
And the teacher's like, oh yeah, I know.
You're still going to sit your butt down and you're going to go through this process that I'm leading you through. And then eventually we'll get to the drum kit.
Now get back on marimba and the snare drum. I was like, what is this? This is so mean. At what
point around, I mean, was it that early? Were you really young whenever you thought to yourself, I won't do anything the rest of my life professionally. I will pursue this as a profession. I'll make my living this way. Like when did those thoughts start to kind of creep in?
I think it was a step level process. The first time I think the first step was just knowing that drums was really what I wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
And that was when I was about 11 years old. Um, I tried cello in the 4th grade,
Yeah.
which I love that instrument. I tried trumpet in the 5th grade, and after I got the high C, I was like, I'm out. And then I can't do this. And then I was like, I looked, and I remember just looking over to my buddies in the class who were playing drums, and who, in my mind, just couldn't quite get it, And I
Yeah.
was thinking to myself, I should just, it sounds weird, but I need to help. I should be over there. I should just, but after the trumpet thing, it was about the sixth grade, and I decided that's it. I should be playing drums. And that's my seat, and that's where I belong. And I'm going to go pursue that and quit trying to do this and that and this. I was trying everything, and those, like you do when you're younger. I tried to play every sport.
Yeah.
I tried to play every instrument, but drums is where I was the most comfortable and most inspired. So it was about 11 years old with that decision. It would be later, because I would also play in every club and every church and every country club, every birthday party, wedding, and venue, and learn about the business playing with my mother.
Yeah.
We would play jazz standards everywhere. She was the music director at several churches. And so if I was doing anything in church, I'd be on the drums,
Sure.
playing with my mom. If I was doing everything, we'd go to a nightclub that evening or that weekend, and she put me to work, and she's like, he's got a talent. I'm gonna just hone in on, raise him up with his talent, and he's gonna learn how to do this. He's gonna learn how to listen. He's gonna learn how to, play different styles.
Yeah.
He's gonna learn how to watch and pay attention, So I did that from 12 years old till I was 17. And it wasn't until I started playing live in Fort Worth with Pop Hoppins in Saginaw, Texas. That's when my first band, that was when the career aspect of it in my mind started. Because, as a kid, you're just playing. You're just having fun. You're going home. You're living at home. But for me, it was always a purposeful work environment gig. I was having fun, but it was also the work environment since I was 12 years old.
Got it.
So moving to the band level was just trying to find guys who saw it the same way I did, and career, and found out that, that's not always the case. We're not always on the same page about those things,
Yeah. I don't know what kind of church you were going to back in the day then, but I can tell you, because I in my limited drumming career myself, a casual career of drumming, one of the primary places that I played was in church. But when we first started introducing drums in church back home where I'm from, it was not met with very much positivity or support. There was a lot of the drums are devils. There's a devil's instrument, so
that's right. Yeah.
And not to age either one of us, but I'm a little bit younger than me. So if you were playing drums, at like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade in church, man, I congratulations. You had some progressive, you were attending some progressive churches back then, man. Cause it was crazy. The looks I would get sitting behind a drum kit sometimes early on, like at church, is like, oh, these people really don't like this at all. So.
Oh no, I remember. I mean, it would depend on where you would end up, and if you were in Pentecostal type churches, or I had moved into the we did everything from the Southern Baptist, to the charismatic movement of churches.
Yeah.
We originally came out of the African Methodist Episcopal realm, which is basically like almost, from, if you were to look at it visually, it's like Protestant Catholicism. Same scene, same same Gothic church, same robes, so on and so
very
forth.
regimented service.
Hymnals, and there's no drums in those hymns. There's no drums anywhere.
Yeah.
And so you're all turning to page 656, and you're singing 12 verses.
Yeah.
That sound the same.
And
that's it. And so it wasn't until we got to the Baptist churches. But yeah, I remember going with my friends and even the Methodist churches. The Methodist churches, it would be very controlled, but we had music, in those churches, and that's really where I started. And then the Baptist and charismatic churches and so on and so forth. But yeah, I remember going to some churches with my buddies, and there was no instruments in that room.
No.
No. Yeah. You could barely dance. So you could stand there stiff like a rod and bounce up and down if you wanted, but you better not move a hip.
Yeah, no. I know now you go to some churches and there's smoke machines and light shows and
it's like a Kiss concert in there.
The hottest band in the world.
I was like, man, there's gonna be pyrotechnics anytime. Oh, there they go. Yeah. And out they come.
All right, so let's jump ahead. You mentioned Pop Poppins. That was that the first kind of, I'll just use the real band that you joined or started with a group?
It was this band called Haunted Generation first, and then when a previous singer and another different bands from Austin, a band called October 8th, the singer for that band rejoined with the guitar player. And the guitar player's brother and I went to high school together, and it, the usual incestuous circles. We became Pop Poppins, and then about a year into it, it was clear that they wanted to do more experimentation with substances and stuff, and I was just like, nah, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah,
and I don't see the focus like I was used to, and that's when I met. That's when I joined up with the Toadies back in the day, and because they wanted to do one thing, and that was play, and I think Vaden was extremely focused at the time, and the band was fun. The band rocked, and their previous drummer Terry Valdez was moving on to different things, and I would go see them in the Fort Worth clubs. Back in the day was the Axis Club. We all the kids would go down there and watch bands play, and I was like, man, this band is rocking. They want to do it. And so when they were looking for another drummer, they asked me to do it. I was like, yep, you got it, done. Because at least you want to play, and because that to me was on the path to like being serious about trying to get a career going. I loved making music with Pop Poppins. Was the easiest thing in the world. They brought songs to the table. We would sit down, play them. It'd be done. I felt like my job was really easy. And then when I wanted to contribute something or was asked to, I could, and it became part of the repertoire as well. But at some point, those two projects, the demand both started to get more and more attention at the same time, and a choice had to be made. So that was my first introduction to having to make a hard choice. And I had teaching. I had mentors to look up to in the area, and I remember there was a band called oh man, I just blanked. Mike Dillon had Billy Goat back then. Paul Slavens had his band. Brave Combo was around, but there was a big decision that Earl Harvin, another one of my favorite drummers in the business, played with Air, Tender Sticks, Psychedelic Furs,
Got it.
You name it. And he was a go-to call. Seal. Um, I remember he had to make a tough decision once, and he left this band called Tin Hands back in the day, and decided to do something different. And I remember that, that was like front page news in the Deep Ellum News,
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how are these guys processing all of this stuff? I had mentors to look up to and to kind of follow, like, well, they had to do it too. I'm not alone in this. This must be this is part of the business. You have to make tough decisions. And if you are in that position to make tough decisions, you're probably fairly good at what you're doing,
Yeah. So when you're talking about making a decision, do I go the route of Pop Poppins or do I go the route of Toadies? Is that what you're
right?
So when you make that decision, clearly you went the route of Pop Poppins.
Right.
This is before the Toadies had their big hit a couple of years later with Possum Kingdom. Anybody that's from anybody in the rock world at that time would have heard that song. It was huge in Texas and Louisiana for sure.
Right.
When you make that call, like you go the Pop Poppins route, and then you see a year, 2 years later, this other band that I was a part of is having like this massive success with Possum Kingdom.
Yeah.
Like, how did that feel for you? I mean,
I just remember being, honestly, even my own mother was like, how do you feel about that? She wanted to know. She was like, does that bother you? And I honestly was just happy for my friends. I was like, wow, someone slipped through the cracks. Someone got through.
Yeah.
Those songs were 4 years old,
Yeah.
I mean, before Rubberneck. I mean, when I heard Rubberneck come out, it was really kind of in my mind, an old record.
Yeah.
He'd written all those songs probably, and most of those songs were written 91, maybe 90, 91, maybe earlier. And so they were amalgamations of songs, of old songs, and where they had gone, where they were at currently at that time. And so I just remember feeling really excited for them, because there was a clear reality for us all. We were all hustling. We all had this healthy competition between us all in Deep Ellum. We were all very diverse. I remember just being there was a lot of diversity in North Texas, and and Todd was working at Sound Warehouse. Vaden was working at Sound Warehouse.
Right.
So, I mean, there was a clear reality. Everybody was going to work,
Yeah. Right.
trying to stay alive. And so when that broke through, I was like, man, it was one thing to get on the radio. That was great, because radio was everything then, and so was MTV.
Sure.
You knew if you could get on one of those formats and get some real support. We were lucky enough to have real support. Pop Albans was lucky enough to have real support from a local DJ named George Gamark. And with our first album in 90, he probably 5 songs got played religiously off of that. And he really put us in a position where we were playing Six Flags the following year. We were the only local band on one of the early Edge Fest, like the radio stations, festivals. I remember playing between Gene Loves Jezebel and Dinosaur Jr. On that tour, and things looked like for everybody that it was going to go like that for everybody, and of course it didn't. There were bands like the Toadies who got through. Yeah, bands like the Nixons got through down from Oklahoma City. Of course, Better Than Ezra got through down in Louisiana, down in New Orleans. Yeah. Tripping Daisy got through.
Deep Blue something. Deep Blue, was it Deep Blue something?
Deep Blue something. Yeah. Got through with Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is still a big one for them. Tripping Daisy got through with a song called I Got a Girl.
Yeah, I remember that song. Again, that was just like a staple on the radio back during that time.
That's right. And it was just super fun.
used to hear about because again, I was living in Coshada, grew up in Coshada, and I grew up, loving music. My dad, it was kind of one of the tight things that my dad and I shared. I think that he just kind of instilled in me early on. But you would hear all these bands like the Toadies and Tripping Daisy, and they would be playing them in Shreveport radio, and they would be talking about, they're just from just down the road in Dallas. And you would hear about shows at Deep Ellum, and I'd never even been to Deep Ellum. I didn't know what that was back then, but it was like, and then there was this one area of Shreveport at the time. It was like Malibu Beach Club, I think was the name of the venue in like downtown Shreveport. But it would draw in all of these. You would hear the DJs talk about Trippin' Daisies is going to be down at Malibu Beach Club or whatever this place is. And you'd hear the songs, and it's like, man, this is so cool. And even when I hear that like those genres of songs or those specific songs now, I still have like that feeling of when I was, 13, 14 years old, hearing them on the radio. I'm like, oh man, you feel, because they're just down the road, you feel like you almost know them. Really, really, really cool. So when all that's happening, are you, because you're right in the middle of it, are you thinking, oh man, it's only a matter of time, we're next, we're gonna be the next one that kind of gets through? Or are you just kind of doing your deal and playing the gigs and recording the music and just, living life in the moment and seeing what will be?
I think it was a little of both. And what I mean by that is because you saw all that energy just swirling around, because of the quote grunge movement. By 92, everything had changed. And it was, even bands that never had a bit of distortion in their music added distortion because of the times.
Yeah.
I think some of the only bands that didn't really were maybe Hootie and the Blowfish. They held true. Maybe Matchbox 20 kind of held to their thing. And, maybe the Posies, stuff like that up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And you had bands that stayed true to their sound. But mostly everything was being very highly affected by the grunge movement. And Dallas in particular is a very hard town. It's a very hard, heavy rock town, and metal did really well, really well in Dallas. Like, it's the birthplace of Pantera at Arlington.
Sure.
Arlington High's Pantera was well known, who was competing with, bands like Metallica at the same time. So, there was a lot of exciting things happening at that time.
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick. You hear me up? Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to set off.
All right.
Tell Emma I said hello and I missed her.
Emma, Jamie just says hello and he missed you. Come say hello. You can't hear.
Jamie.
I can hear. How are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
How you doing?
Yeah, how are you? Good. Oh, now you can see me.
We have to have a sushi date soon. I'll be out that way sometime this summer.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought he was doing an interview. Are you interviewing him?
I am.
Oh.
I'm in the middle of it.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Now this is part of it.
Seeing you.
That way you made a cameo. She's
That's
getting
right.
on her little bikini. She's got this little electric bike. And she scoots around, a little scooter that she scoots around town in. So,
well, I'm not editing this part out, so let her know what she is.
Oh yeah, this won't be edited out, he says.
Yeah. You got to keep it.
That's perfect. We'll see in a bit.
So you're talking about, we were talking about all the success that bands are having. You mentioned, how big of a scene Dallas had, particularly around metal and Pantera. But how, as this is going on and you're seeing, all these bands kind of make it, what are you thinking at the time? Are you thinking, oh, it's just a matter of time before we make it? Or is it just, hey, we're going to keep doing what I'm doing and let the chips fall where they may?
Yeah, I think I was having such a good time playing because at this time as well, we were being, quote, courted by labels all the time.
Right.
And because everyone who had just taken part or had been buzzing around Seattle to get on some of that wave had all moved to Dallas. to find out where they could find the next scene. And Dallas was a hotbed, you know.
Yeah.
Dallas was the scene. I mean, everybody, of course, was working in Austin. Austin had its own thing, and it was a very closed scene down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they kind of like they kind of created a bubble around themselves a little bit, and noticeably tried to kind of let people know that you were either in Austin or you weren't, and they were
right.
There was clear ostracization going on with bands from Dallas, and I'm not sure about Houston, but yeah, they definitely showed bands from Dallas that, you know, we weren't necessarily welcome at that time, you know. And so it was a little of both. There was excitement that it was all happening for other people and anybody, because the more energy that was happening for everybody else, the more attention that could possibly come our way as well. But we were in Pop Islands was such a quirky ass band, man. You know, we didn't line up with anything that made really any sense. We just, I remember we had a writer in Deep Ellum, Dallas, that just hated our guts. He hated us, you know, and he would write paragraph. He would write, you know, at least 1 or 2 paragraphs about it, because it was one of those phenomenons where we always had, you know, even on the weakest night, we'd have like 500 people in a room.
Yeah.
And on weekends, we'd have 800 to 1,000 people in the room consistently for years.
Right.
And this was ongoing. And so you knew when you got an article like that, when you read an article like that, you were like, well, this guy doesn't like us, so what, you know? Because these people every weekend prove that they do. You know, every year there's all these people and we're getting all this radio play, but he was just avidly against. He was against us. It was really funny. But our fans would get really upset about reading all that stuff too. And I won't say that it didn't affect us. Nobody wants to hear bad criticism about what it is they're putting their heart and soul into. Especially for me, the bottom line, it was just like, well, I'm not even offended other than the fact that I have fun doing it. It brings me joy doing it. And this guy's just peeing all over my joy. So
when you would run into a guy like that, and he's like writing for like a local, you know, publication, do you say anything to him, or do you just kind of walk past him and, you know, flip him the proverbial bird and like, yeah, get out of here, I don't want to talk to you?
Oh, I definitely brought it to his attention. I mean, today we're all adults. We were, somewhat adult back then, but we're all adults now. And, he was just being honest about what he felt and writing about it, because that was his job, and it brought him attention to do it. And I felt compelled to go ahead and let him know that I disagreed. And he kind of had that defensive look on his face, like he knew, because he knew he probably like, oh, it's like, what's this guy gonna come at me with, But it just didn't matter. It was a cool time to where you were affected by both the energy of the time. You cared about it because you were trying to get there like the other people too.
Yeah.
You didn't know what, things were rolling so fast. When that happens, things take off on their own, and you have absolutely no control over it.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it can stop just as fast as it goes up.
Yeah.
You saw that with bands like Dig. I don't know if you remember them.
Oh man, God, I haven't heard that band forever.
I mean, they were MTV, Beggar's Banquet band. I think they were like on a rock. They were on one show that, was consistent, and they were like so many bands at that time playing large places.
Yeah.
The next time I saw them was a year later it was going up for them. I saw them at Trees or something. And then a year later, they were playing this club in San Francisco called Bottom of the Hill. No pun intended. It's like a letter. I was like, yeah, if you're playing here, you know where you're
not going in the right direction.
We all know where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And those were the only clubs we would ever play when we go up to San Francisco back in the day. But to see them there was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Because that's when I first got a glimpse at, like, we're not in control of this. People decide how this is going to go. They decide whether or not you're going to be the band that's going to keep going and inspiring and growing or not. And so, and not me. All you can do is love what you do and keep doing it.
Right.
That's it.
So I'm going to come back to Course of Empire a little bit later on, because I want to talk about that and Mike Graff and some of your other projects. But you eventually end up playing with Pleasure Club, and one of the things that struck me about that time, and again, I didn't know you then, but like, since I've gotten to know you and started digging into like your catalog, James Hall and Pleasure Club, like James Hall is kind of a legend in and of himself as well. It's like one of those guys, though, unless you're a musician, you probably haven't heard from him. But I was reading, a book about that the drummer from the Black Crowes wrote, Steve Gorman, the original drummer from Black Crowes back in the day, and he was talking about growing up, or not growing up, but the Black Crowes starting in Atlanta. I think they were called it Mr. Crow's Garden, but like the band to watch, the big influence was James Hall. So how did you end up coming across that opportunity, and what was that part of your life like? Because that was like the one, if you go Google or search like YouTube videos of old James Hall gigs, I'm not gonna lie, man, like your persona kind of freaked me out a little bit. Like I probably would have judged you a little bit, back in the day. Had I come across you at a show, I'd have been like, what in the hell is this guy? And
yeah.
So tell me about, I'm going to put a picture of you on that. I'm going to post a picture in this podcast of you in that time so people can get what I'm talking about. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Tell me, you had the black mascara and, what was that? What was that like? What was that part of your career like?
I think that was yet another time where I had just moved out to Los Angeles at that time.
Okay.
And I'm post Course of Empire. I'm post, lots of things in between, like a swing band in Dallas called Mr. Pink. And I'm also touring with Richard Thompson now. At the time. So 99, I start with Richard Thompson. Yeah. And so those are three drastically different genres.
Right.
And styles of music. Post-industrial metal to big band swing, jazz standard swing, to folk and folk rock.
Yeah.
And now to this really crazy New York Dolls kind of. This James Hall would go on to influence people like Marilyn Manson, Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam was a fan. Mm-hmm. He had fans everywhere. I mean, Greg Dooley from the Afghan Whigs. I mean, these are people that still show up whenever he comes to town. They're going to be there,
right,
to see what James is doing.
Right.
He had that kind of impact with his band in the late 80s, Marry My Hope, and then with a succession of records as James Hall.
Yeah.
So by the time Pleasure Club came around, we were yet reinventing yet another incarnation of James Hall, and taking it into more of a kind of a Clash realm. And mixed with James Hall stylings.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. It was powerful, but this is a guy that I would go shopping for high heel boots with at Payless. And let me tell you, you haven't lived until you go shopping with a man for high heel boots, black leather, well, fake leather, high heel boots at Payless.
I think I'm just going to choose not to live. If that's what it takes to live, I'm going to opt out.
You know, I mean, this guy was charisma times 10. I mean, there are those performers you come across every now and then that could really do that for you. And James was one that he didn't care if you were this 300-pound Bubba in Alabama. He was going to get off stage in fishnet stockings and high heel boots and stare right through you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And it was electrifying. And you got engaged. You didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. Everybody was always at the edge of their seats. But that environment was also toxic at times, extremely unpredictable and predictably unpredictable.
When you say toxic, are you referring to like just kind of the drugs and the kind of excessive side of music, or is it more just the dynamic of personalities was just toxic? What do you mean by
dynamic of personalities, making unhealthy decisions and choices, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, the wear and tear that, you know, touring and living that way can put on your body.
Yeah.
I mean, our bass player, Grant Curry, bless him, who basically systematically made, you know, was the engine that kept us going, was stone cold sober. There just was a lot of just unhealthy. I think when people are dishonest with themselves as individuals, it makes it really difficult to get along with other people, because you're right out of the chute. You're not, you know, you're not being honest with yourself. So being honest with other people becomes a bit of a challenge. And so, and then it's just a family dynamic. I mean, you're super, super close when you're touring with these bands and their relationships, and someone could look at you and say something one way and just like, what's that supposed to mean? You know, like, man, I just asked you to pass the salt. That's all. What do you mean by that? You know, so I was passing the salt, it's loaded all of a sudden, you know. You just can't get along for any reason. And really it's because you all want success and you all want this to happen, but life is different now. You're older, you've got responsibilities, and you can't pay your bills.
Yeah.
And you're putting unbelievable amounts of blood, sweat, and tears and energy into a project and your performance and your music, and you're getting what seems to be absolutely nothing back. And that wears on you the most. You know, that wears on you the most. And with hindsight, you can look back and go, oh man, we made some pretty cool stuff. We put the time and energy to dress up. We added theater to the mix. We started a trend. We gave people something to look forward to. And to this day, when a band does that, you know, they become something that people that they talk about. You know, they continue to, and you can create something timeless that for them in their lives, they can always look back on that memory and say, I was there during those days and there was nothing like it. So it was a good time.
I remember a few years back, I think it was right after or right before the pandemic, you guys played that gig at the Bomb Factory here. I can't remember, my timing's off. But
right.
You guys got together because the Toadies were playing.
That's right. We opened up.
And you guys opened up. And I remember the Bomb Factory here in Dallas, which is a pretty big venue. It's a big room. And I remember showing up and thinking, well, you guys are going to be the opening band and play kind of early relative to, you know, what typical rock shows start at. Not many people are going to be here, and the room was just packed. And I was like, holy cow. And thankfully, you know, at least from my point of view, you guys decided not to get in the high heels and the fishnets during that show. it was a little bit more of a straight up rock show, not a theatric performance. But yeah, it was fascinating, like how you mentioned just the the fact that that guy influenced and that music influenced so many people, and that was obvious in that one gig that you guys played in Dallas together with the Toadies. It was just, I was amazed at how many people were there and how many people knew all the songs that you guys were playing. Like,
right.
It was fascinating. It was fascinating.
Yeah, we put a lot of work into that, and it's something that, I think yet another band that didn't have to stop, but when you put all your eggs in one basket to achieve only one specific goal, and you don't reach that goal, it's discouraging, and you're prone to quitting. You're prone to stopping.
Yeah. That's an interesting learning. It's an interesting, I want to pause on that for a second. I just had, because when you're going to battle with a group of people, I should use that word loosely, obviously. I mean, but when you're like you said, you're going to achieve a target, and you've got high hopes, and you feel like you're capable of getting there, and you feel like there's a path to getting there, but then you don't get there, or you don't get there on the timeline that you wish you should, or you hope to get there in. It's easy for things like resentment to creep in, and even if you know, like, that, hey, why do I feel this way? But I mean, like, you can, we'd be there if it weren't for your stupid, shitty decision, or if I would have done this differently, then we'd be there. And then you start to doubt yourself. You start to kind of get resentful towards other people that you're kind of locking arms and going to battle with. It's a shame that happens, but I've seen that happen in my own life as well, like in certain business ventures. And it's a good reminder to perspective, just to take a step back and have perspective, and like really appreciate all the things that you did accomplish, and the milestones along the way that you are reaching, even though they may not be what you set your target on in the beginning. Maybe be patient, have a little bit of grace for yourself and for other people. Anyway, I know that's a bit of a tangent, but as you said that, I was like, man, those are wise words. Those are really wise words.
Observation and living the experience. If hopefully you can when you can walk away from it and allow hindsight to show you something, then you can walk away with some wisdom as opposed to regret. Like you're saying, you have to, accountability for one's self in these endeavors is difficult when you're in the heat of the moment. Everybody's passionate. Everybody's senses are heightened, and you fall into the trap of blaming somebody else, for something going wrong. It's like, well, wait a second, what was your role in this? What was my role in this? And communicating things honestly, which in that situation wasn't happening most of the time. So,
right.
My default, my escape, and I think for all of us, our escape was playing our instruments. It's being on stage, it's doing the show, the show. Got to get on stage. We got to do that, because we could just do that. It'll quiet all the other stuff. But problems didn't go away.
Right.
They were there waiting for us as soon as we got off stage, and we just went from town to town to town, not addressing the issues, but thinking that we were.
Right.
And I guess in a sense, at the time, doing the best we could to address them, but just coming up against wall after wall after wall. And after a while, you have to take a break, because until you're coming home to your partner, looking your wife in the eye and going, I got, you've been out for a while now. What is this? 2 months later and 3 months later, and you came home with $500. Like, what? Okay. I guess I guess this is the for better or for worse part of it all, but this has got to stop,
Yeah.
and this is crap. And so, yeah, that's where my accountability had to like snap out of it at some point. And we gave it our best effort. We made I think we made cool music together. And by 2005, we had to wrap it up. And so the shows you saw were 15 years later,
Yeah.
15,
Yep.
17 years later.
Right.
Um, uh, I think our last show was in Mississippi Nights. It's not there anymore in St. Louis.
Got it.
So it's all casino territory now.
Yeah.
Over by the
Yeah.
Arch. But yeah, that was it for us. And then we did those reunions. And by that time, yeah, you weren't going to see much of those theatrics anymore. We were doing our best to breathe, we were sucking wind like crazy.
So I can't believe like we're an hour and 10 minutes in, and this is the first time I want to talk about Better Than Ezra.
Right.
Who is it's how I ended up meeting you and kind of what led to our now friendship. But anybody that knows me knows that I'm when I was young, in my younger years particularly, I was a diehard Better Than Ezra fan. Still obviously I'm a big Better Than Ezra fan, but different dynamic now that I've just become really close friends with you and know a couple of the other guys in the band now. But how did you find yourself in Better Than Ezra? So for people that don't know, you were the third drummer in that band, behind the original drummer, and then the longtime drummer Travis, and then you joined around 2009. How did that happen?
I think again it was the same kind of scenario as the Slash stuff. I mean, it was playing with James Hall and Pleasure Club in New Orleans. We were a New Orleans-based band. Both James Hall lived uptown, and Grant Curry lived in Algiers Point over West Bank.
Wow. Okay.
So I was there a lot. I was half the time of the year I was down in New Orleans for about 5 years. Good 4 years I was down there all the time pre-Katrina. And, And we had our studio down there. We rehearsed down there. My gear was down there. So I was in and out a lot. And we used to play Howlin' Wolf quite a bit. And the old Howlin' Wolf was where the Republic is now, down in the Warehouse District.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Down where One-Eyed, what is it?
Yeah.
Where we all hang One-Eyed
Jacks
over there.
Yeah.
One-Eyed Jacks. And what's the other place? There's another place down on that strip. Because I know we've had dinner down there too. Those restaurants are gone.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah, that was the night that Brian Davis tackled the chef.
Yeah,
to tell him how good the food was.
That was so fun. And then that bar all the way that Tommy ran down at the bar where I always had to leave my backpack. I can't remember what that bar was down at the very end. I thought it wasn't One-Eyed Jacks.
Yeah, One-Eyed Jacks is in the quarter, isn't it? Or what? Or One-Eyed Jacks?
That's in the quarter. But this one was another bar. But anyway, I can't believe I can't remember that. But yeah, that's where we all went afterwards, and that's where I picked Brian up to try to tackle him and show him I could do some rugby. I had some rugby skills. Then he invited me down to play with some New Zealanders.
I was going to come back to that at some point.
And I ran myself into the ground. Nobody even touched me. My legs ran out from underneath me. I hit the ground, and then my back seized up, and I had to hobble off the field.
Yeah. That story. Hearing that story will never get old.
Oh my God! Like the mind is willing, man. The mind is willing. But yeah, I was playing with Pleasure Club, and they were, of course, friends with Better Than Ezra. Everybody knew Better Than Ezra if you were in New Orleans, and I think Grant knew Tom Drummond, bass player, and I remember meeting him, Tom, that night and saying hello, but I think it was Brian Barry, tour manager at the time, used to tour managed Cowboy Mouth as well, and other parties that claim they were there coming up, to come up with a decision on finding a new drummer, someone to replace, to sit in Travis's chair when
Yeah.
after leaving to join Sugarland in
Yeah.
Nashville. So that's pretty much how it happened. And in 2008, I met up with Kevin Griffin, who was living in Los Angeles at the time. I met him down at the Hotel Cafe, and we had a little meeting to talk about it. And I was still fresh off of the Pleasure Club stuff and was still not in a good headspace. And I was also touring with John Cale at the time. Excuse me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
With John Cale at the time. And that was also not the healthiest environment for me. So I wasn't in the right headspace at all to be probably meeting up with Kevin or, and I definitely wasn't thinking about joining another band after that. I was just spent. But the way Kevin presented it to me made it seem like something that we could do, because it wasn't, he made it very clear that I was kind of they weren't looking for that. And he was struggling with whether or not to continue with the band or start a solo career. And he struggled with that. He was struggling with that, but had decided to do what, as he put it, his first love and his baby, and really wanted to keep Better Than Ezra going. And, but that this could be a cool opportunity, because I would be a gun for hire. I'd be hired on. It would be spot gigs every now and then, and you could continue doing whatever it is you do. And so that was the premise that I started on. But of course, we met up later to have kind of an audition to see if it would work. And again, my head was still kind of uncommitted, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I did the exact opposite of really being prepared to go in and play with the guys.
Got it.
And after we played, Kevin gave me a call and said, "Man, I really appreciated you taking the time to play with us today, and we had a lot of fun. But I just have to say that it kind of took us off guard, that we thought you'd be a little bit more prepared when you showed up." And that got my attention, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, because I literally hadn't even thought about it. I was so busy trying to figure out what was going on in my head, how I felt, what I wanted. And he just laid it out and said, "Listen, we just, we want to move on. We want you, we've decided that we think you're the guy to do it, and we really want you to do it. I guess the question is, what do you want to do?" And when somebody asks you that question, that's pretty cut and clear. It's like you are faced with a real heart to heart with self. What do you want to do? And I hadn't asked myself that, and I hadn't really had anybody else ask me that either. It was just going through the motions, getting through the gig. And I think I was so busy trying to decide what that was. In that moment, I hadn't really addressed that question until then. And so I responded with, afterwards, I said, he goes, "I want to play with Better Than Ezra." Like that. And that was my answer. And he goes, "Well, good, because that's what we want. And I'm happy to hear you say that." And so it was after that I really started to put my mind into, going back to what we were saying earlier, doing the best I could to make sure that I reversed the impression that I had left, because it's the opposite of the impression that you want to leave ever.
Sure.
Yeah. And then promptly tried to, in the process, my process was, again, missing the point, and I went in and tried to be Travis, which was impossible. Only Travis is Travis. And I set up like Travis, and I tried to play Travis's parts as best I could, and learn those parts, instead of really going in and making those parts my own right from the start.
Yeah.
And it would take a while before I started being me with the band. And but once I did, it got a whole lot more comfortable. And I think it showed with the audience too. I think the crowd and people knew that, something's different now. This is different, and we've come to expect and want to hear this now than anything else. But I had to get past all my little, mind games and do me, be myself.
Yeah.
And once I did that, things started to click a whole lot better with the band. And I think it's been I would never use the word well-oiled machine with better than it. But
I don't know. I think that's a fair word. It's just like if you've seen Ezra shows a lot, like I have, you know that it's a very unique in its own machine.
We're well lubed.
All right. We'll go with that. We'll go with lubed. We'll go with that.
There's oil in there, but the gears are going.
You are right though. There was a period of time when you were new to the band, because like there are, Ezra does have a very loyal, devout fan base that's been with them for a really long time, and I've gotten to be friends with some of those folks over the years, and there were a handful of fans, female for the most part, that were very, very not cool with you, the new drummer guy, for a while.
Absolutely, yeah. That was it. Yeah.
You probably know who a couple of them are.
I know them now. It's funny. I know them now. I know them, and they're friends. But,
yeah, of course. It's
funny.
Yeah, but there was that growing. There was that time it took for you to grow on them, and I did say, again, as a very novice drummer, but huge fan of music and a huge fan of drummers myself, I would definitely agree with what you said early on when you started playing. It was clear that you were trying a little too hard to sound exactly to the parts, to the notes that were played by Travis, and not just kind of playing those notes and those parts as yourself. And when you started doing that, that's whenever the energy of the band and the shows, at least for me, kind of change in a very positive way. I was like, okay, this is different than when Travis played, but it's like a very awesome, unique, very authentic experience, because you're being yourself.
Right.
You're playing as yourself. So it's cool that you obviously you recognize that as well. And was there a moment when you felt that shift happened, or did it just kind of gradually happen over time, or was there like something you're recording or a particular show where you were like, okay, that's what this should feel like?
Yeah, I think it was gradual.
Yeah.
I think it was a very gradual thing, to where I felt, and it was years, it was to where I felt just really comfortable with the band, and I think a large part of that has to do with me being comfortable with what I was doing. When you're doing multiple projects at the same time, a lot of bands get up and they do better than Ezra. The guys are getting up and they're doing that. But, Kevin has many things going on. He's writing for everybody. He's writing for different labels and artists out there, and he's pursuing different projects on his own career.
Yeah.
And then there's better than Ezra. Tom is dealing with his projects and side projects, and Jim does what Jim does, and we all come back together to work with Better Than Ezra. But I've got different musical genres going on actively. Like, and at that time, I was touring with Richard Thompson and John Cale at the same time.
I remember that because I remember talking to you when we became friends pretty quick after you joined the band. And I remember calling you one time and you were in Europe. I'd just seen you like a week or two before with Ezra somewhere. And I was in LA for work and I was calling to see if you were in town to grab dinner. And you were like, no, man, I'm on a train in France or something. I was like, what are you doing there? And you were on a tour with John Cale for like 30, like a month or 45 days or something. And you were staying busy. So you were going from Ezra, which is a very, kind of straightforward pop rock genre music, to John Cale, which is, much more eclectic, for lack of a better word, to Richard Thompson, which is its own version, a different version of eclectic.
Right. Yeah. And I think what it did was the only one I was the most comfortable with was Richard.
Yeah.
With Richard, by that time I had been with Richard for 20 years,
Yeah.
And well, at that time, maybe, never been good at math, probably close to 20 years.
Yeah.
But, and that was comfortable. But with John, it was a struggle to, we had the same kind of dynamic that I had in Pleasure Club,
Yeah.
It was cordial enough, but, the energies in the bands were it was never, you never felt absolutely comfortable. You never felt entirely at home and or safe, So, and these things, they contribute quite a bit to the dynamic of a band and the music they make and the energy that you see in a live performance. Those dynamics that we had, as difficult as they might have been, it made us a pretty good band. I mean, for 7 years, I'd like to say that John Cale had a really good band. He's had good bands over the years. He's played with just about everybody in the business. But I thought we had a good thing. We definitely had a good band in those years. But when your head is there and then you jump back on the BTE train, you got to shift gears.
Yeah.
And be fully present to help those songs come to fruition and put that energy into delivering those songs for the fans and the people who've known and loved that music for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that hindered fully embracing one or the other entirely. And I think it's what slowed the process of me being more myself with Better Than Ezra at the time. Because, the fact of the matter is I joked about us loosely being a well-oiled machine, but, we're talking about a band that we can get on stage and just go for it. And it's going to look like a top show, 9 times out of 10, we're going to put on a really good show. Kevin's an incredible entertainer. He's a front person.
Yeah.
He knows how to do that stuff really well. And we know how to plug in on the spot, play loud and play together.
Yeah.
And then get off stage,
Yeah.
It just depends on if you're going to be at the show where Kevin's telling more stories, talking a little bit longer than normal. Is it did you see the 1 hour show or did you see the 2 hour show?
Yeah, right.
Either way, I think everybody still walks away. And this is what I love about the fans. With I think BTE has some of the best fans. It's one of probably I would have to put them at the top. Their fans are in any of the bands I've ever been in. Their fans have been at the top, number one best bands. And, they all walk away feeling like this was the show of all the shows I've seen. You still hear them saying this one was the best one. And so I think, there's no question that I joke because we're clearly close enough now to joke.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm joking like you joke with your family, but it's just as incredible to have the opportunity to play with a band like this that has done what so many bands have failed to do, and that's stay together 30 plus years and still have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And doing it well.
Agreed. It's a testament. All right. I want to shift gears a couple more times. How are you on time, by the way? I know we've gone a while. Are you good?
I'm good.
So what are your top 3 favorite Better Than Ezra songs? Compare notes here.
Oh man. To be fair, I would probably want, there's Where You Are I'll just give you my off the spot things, but then, you dig through the repertoire again, and you're like, oh man, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
But I'm a Closer fan. I like songs like Briefly.
Mm-hmm.
I liked, I know that most fans are Hotties or Garden Grove fans. That's their number one record, but My Time Was Deluxe, in the 90s, and that will probably always hold more. So it's a time sound thing for me, and what is more fun to play live. And I like playing songs like let's see. I like Briefly. I like that song. I like Closer. I like In the Blood.
Yeah.
I like Playing Good, believe it or not. We only play it every single night. I still like playing that one. That was fun because of the time again.
Yeah.
I like Pull.
Oh wow.
I like your normal 90s rock sounding songs. There's a song, I'm blanking on the name. You're gonna have to give it a minute. Long Lost. I like Long Lost.
Yeah, Long Lost is great. That show, those shows that you guys did a couple of years ago, playing Friction Baby, all the way through at House of Blues in New Orleans.
Yeah,
those are 2 of my favorite shows in a long time. I mean, I actually, that was How's Your Garden Grow is my favorite album.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody of course loves Deluxe because of Good and Rosalia and In the Blood, but I started listening to Friction Baby a lot after those shows, and that's a great album.
Yeah,
really great. Like lots of heavy guitar. Yeah, I love that album.
It's a good rock record,
Messed with Tom a couple of times over the years because I think you guys recorded those, and I'm like, man, you guys should release those as live albums because those would be great. But yeah,
I like, and then on the ballad side, there's a song that didn't get much attention when I joined called Fit. It was actually the only one I played on that record.
Oh, on Paper Empire?
On Paper Empire. And I thought Paper had some good songs on it too. I like I Just Knew. And off the new record, I like Omens.
Oh yeah, that's a great song.
And I like Super Magic.
I do too. I didn't want to like it at first.
I know, and I realized why do I was like, why do I like this? It has a feel that Zombie had when I first heard Zombie.
Like Cranberries?
Yes.
You're right.
Like,
it does.
cool. I'm like, this is why I'm like, why do I like this so much? Why is this growing on me?
Yeah. It's funny, man. When you guys played that, I heard it for the first time, a month or 2 ago, back when you guys played the House of Blues shows in New Orleans. And I was like, I don't really know that I like that song. And then,
Yeah.
I got the album, and then I started listening to the album, and I was like, I really don't want to admit that I like this song, but I really started to like this song. And now I'm just like, this is actually a really great song. I love this song. So
I think it came out pretty good. There was, there's always the nitpicky things you hear as the artist. You're listening to like, oh, the drums are a little flat here, and I should have used these, and I wish I'd done this or I'd done that, or that's not the sound I was thinking it was going to be.
yeah.
And then once you get past that and you just listen to the song like an objective, music lover, it has an entirely different feel to you. And then you can just take it on as, what does, okay, that's great. That's great. The toms sound weird to you and the hi-hat sounds weird. What about the song,
Yeah.
And that's what sticks through a lot on this record. It's kind of a short and sweet record, it just kind of starts and finishes. It's a good listen all the way through, and so those would be tops. Obviously that question is so wide open. You're like, what are your top? And I was like, I gave you like a top 6 or 7 instead of 3.
Hey, it's all good, man. You're right. There's something, I think that's what I've always loved about music just in general, is like the makeup of the song, everything from the lyrics to the production to the instrumentation. And Better Than Ezra has kind of been one of those bands. It's just kind of been like a soundtrack to my life. I mean, I like everybody else, like loved Good when it came out. And then every album they released, I remember those periods of my life very well for whatever reason. And even a couple of years ago, my parents split up for a period of time back in 2021, beginning of 22, I guess. And it was a really difficult time, for a lot of reasons. But I remember, I went for a run one day, and it was cold outside because it was like January. And, I went for a run, and I was listening to music, and I just had my Spotify on shuffle, and Grateful came on at the time you guys had released it, like just kind of as a single. And I literally stopped running and like broke down crying, because even I was definitely going through a very kind of victim mindset at the time. Like, my parents, have been married for 40 plus years, and now, they've split up, and this sucks, and why did this happen? And, God, you're an asshole, and, and Dad, you're an asshole, and what did I do, Jamie, like, to contribute to this? And then that song came on, and I just remember, man, like, wow, even through the midst of a really difficult time, like, it was a gentle reminder that I had a lot to be grateful for. And I still think it's really cheesy in shows whenever you mimic the voice in the background, but outside of that, it's a great song.
Well, you nailed it. Yeah. Yeah. There are those things that Kevin just loves that you just play along. He loves it. And so he's the boss. You play along.
I get it, man.
I'm like, yeah, because like you say in the song, I'm grateful every day.
Mm-hmm.
I get to like be in this rock band and make a living doing what I love. And if I have to do a few cheesy bits,
yeah, we all got
in order to keep going. I mean,
100%.
This is life, a lot of people go to work and they have to deal with, the job and the boss and the one employee that makes their day a living hell every day.
Yeah.
And I all I have to do is, sing along to a little track where somebody's going,
hey, but you nail it every time though. Like, you really like, I mean, there's some people, pay no doubt, there are people at y'all shows that definitely think that you are doing that. That's really you in the show. Yeah. Yeah, there are people in the audience that you're selling it well. So
you just never know what it doesn't some people it's the little things, the phrase, it's the little things.
mhm.
It doesn't take much to bring somebody a little bit of happiness.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the cool things about Kevin, and as an entertainer, his mind is constantly buzzing about what, he tries stuff and is
Mhm.
constantly bouncing around like this little kid. And he brings a bit of youth to the stage,
Yeah.
because, and he keeps the show from being boring.
No, yeah,
So
for sure.
there's so many shows out there where the songs are great. They nail it. The band's incredible.
Mhm.
And I've literally walked out on shows because I was bored to tears,
Yeah.
because they were just doing the songs and up there doing their thing, and there was no interaction with the crowd and no entertainment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing, no frayed edges.
Right.
Nothing was loose. Nothing was, rough around the edges at all. And I mean, yeah, I'm not going to go into all the people that I'm just like, okay, I got it. 20 minutes in, I get
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
get it. I can listen to the record if I want to see that.
Right.
I don't
Right.
need to pay to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to see you guys going at it up on stage. I want to feel like I'm on the roller coaster with you, you
Yeah.
know. And then you got my undivided attention. I'd rather go see a bunch of kids play at a garage band somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. For
You
sure.
know, that's more energy, that's more interactive. I mean, you can see them striving for something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I do love that aspect. And like I say, if I got to get up and fake up some blues man vocals, that Kevin actually sang that on the record.
Oh, did he really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
that's actually Kevin.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Did not know that. Did not know
Yeah.
that.
And he's like, just scream it, just scream it. And there are times where, the track wouldn't work and I had to do it myself. I was like, oh my God.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Well, look, we'll move on from Ezra. I will say though, and I know you didn't play on these albums, but on this
Right.
album, but I personally believe that on How Does Your Garden Grow, Under You, followed by Live Again, is probably one of the best 1-2 song combos on any record in the last 30 years.
Those are good ones. Yes.
Yeah, the sequencing
good
and the
ones.
lead in from one to the other. I'm telling you, if you're listening to this podcast, go turn on Better Than Ezra, How Does Your Garden Grow, listen to those two songs and tell me I'm wrong. All right, moving
There you
on.
go.
Moving
That's
on.
that.
So I do want to talk about one band that I've heard you just consistently talk about being a part of over the years. Again, I'm gonna make a comment that I think this is like the band that's closest to your heart from my point of view that you've been a part of is Course of Empire.
That's
So
right.
even if it wasn't the most important, like I certainly know that it was a really important part of your life, and then that kind of led into a project called Halls of the Machine, of which I've got my record here.
Yeah.
There we go.
All
There we go,
tribal,
promotion. Yeah.
all
There we go,
tribal
Halls of the Machine.
dignitaries.
Yeah, yeah. So I know we're going backwards though, back to your time in Dallas. But let's talk a little bit about that band. Like you said, I think you called them like industrial metal.
Yeah.
Maybe, but yeah, interesting stuff. What was that time in your life like?
It was another exciting time, because it would have been 2 years after making the decision to go back to Pop Poppins after the Toadies. And in no time at all, Pop Poppins just kind of stayed in a perpetual state of argument. We just like fought
Yeah.
all the time. But making music, it was so easy, and playing shows, and Pop Poppins fans were like Better Than Ezra fans back in the day. And but we were always just fighting about something. There was always some arguing going on. And so when Chad Lovell, the drummer for Course of Empire,
Yeah.
came to a show one night, and asked me to join, it kind of gave me quite a bit to consider at the time. It was 1993. And I remember asking my girlfriend at the time, she was like, I can see what's wrong. What's going on? What's going on in your head? And I said, drummer for Course of Empire just asked me to join the band. And she knew, like, right off the bat, that was something I was going to need to really consider, because it was yet another career move, and something that I might not want to pass up,
Yeah.
knowing the state of Pop Poppins at the time, and it was a perpetual state of just like, these guys are going to constantly alienate themselves from potential label support, management companies,
Yeah.
no matter how much energy we had coming at us, we always seemed to, like, once they finally met us, they would show up and kind of leave like going, wow, what did I just fly out here for?
Yeah.
And we were just a mess, very much we were very much ourselves. We were being ourselves. And in that respect, it was the most real and the most comfortable. But we couldn't get along, and so we just looked like a bunch of just kids,
Yeah.
who didn't know what the hell was going on. And they were right to a certain extent. But joining Chorus of Empire at the time was, without a doubt, the most formidable band, in my opinion, in Dallas. When you heard them, there was no mistake about their sound and the songs, the message that they were sending through in their songs, and the performance was second to none. It was just, it was a force to reckon with. It was a wonderful thing to see live, and I thought, man, it would be great to be a part of this. And their concept, Chad Lovell had explained it, sold it to me, and it was very passionate about the band and had devised this elaborate way of selling it to me, and said, listen, we're a 5-piece, and this is where the name comes from. It comes from Thomas Cole, an American landscape artist who did a series of paintings called The Course of Empire. And which was, we happened on the tour one time to actually see in DC at the gallery at one of the Smithsonian's.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was incredible. It starts with a series of, it's 2 panels on the far, on your side on the far right, and 2 on the far left. And it starts with the beginning.
Yeah.
And then below it is architectural, patriarch and architectural. And the centerpiece is called construction. And then the far left panels are destruction. And the last panel is desolation. And it's basically a series of watching the progression of man do what man does over and over and over again, without fail, throughout time.
Yeah.
The scene and nature stays exactly the same in all the paintings. Man comes in, builds all his shit, and then it comes back down to desolation. And it's the only thing that remains the same is the river that went through the field before man got there. The hogback ridge is in the background, the boulder, and the grass comes back.
Yeah.
So
it's like fascinating. Like that really resonates with me right now. I just got back from a week in Italy, and I spent out in Rome. And there's no better picture of what you just described.
Let me tell you, you were in the heart, but you were in the centerpiece of it.
Yeah.
You were standing and walking on 4 levels of city.
Yep.
Crazy. We'll have to get back to that. And
we'll definitely.
That's going to be my interview to you, just asking you questions about Italy, your experience in Rome.
Fair enough.
But he proceeded to sell it to me, and I said, absolutely. I came back later and met with the guys, and it was the end of night. It was like October of 93. And I met with the guys, and they weren't really concerned. They just wanted a yes or no. And I was like, yeah, but it was a really hard decision for me.
Yeah.
Because I had already been through this.
Yeah. You'd chosen Poppins over the Toadies, and now you're forced with another decision.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get back in that. I didn't want to get back in that and do the same thing that I had done to my bandmates in the Toadies again.
Yeah.
So I did make the decision to do it, and at the end but it was loose. I remember we flew to New York and met with their publishing company, Warner Chappell at the time, and he said, and he puts his arms around me. He's like, so he's got, he's doing his name, Kenny McPherson. He puts his arm around my neck. He's like, yeah, so the boys tell me you've just joined the band and, looking forward to seeing how things pan out. But so you're in the band now, right? And looks me in the eye. I was like, yeah. And I hadn't made any decision. I was like, you got another play along.
Selling you on it. Yeah, that's right.
I was like, play along, because it's clear the guys need something solid. They need to know that this thing is up and running. It's going to open up the faucet for money to flow. The label needs to know what's going on. And we were sharing the label with bands like Matthew Sweet and Tool.
Oh yeah.
And Love Swing and all these bands back in the day. So with Zoo Entertainment, and they needed to know some answers, and we needed to get a record out there. So by '94, I was in the band, and we kicked off the tour at Deep Ellum Live down there on Canton and Crowders.
Yeah.
So that was great. That was a great year.
Two drummer band too. Yeah.
Yeah, we had two drummers. Original drummer's name was Anthony Headley, and he and Mike Graff, guitar players, were SMU film students.
Yeah, I've talked to Mike about that. Yeah,
and they
used to sneak into the studio and at night whenever you weren't supposed to be there and like do some recording.
Man, they did a ton of stuff, and then ultimately they needed music for their films.
Yeah,
and they kind of started making that. That's why they kind of started there, and it was the two of them, and they started soliciting. They put an ad out for a singer. Vaughn comes along. They get Paul, the whole bit. And Chad later comes in. Chad Lovell actually came in after the fact to kind of support the percussion aspect that Anthony wasn't really, couldn't really hold entirely at the time.
Got it.
So it became two drummers. But then they got signed, and the first record came out. Alan Restrepo, by the way, and I'm sorry to take this tangent, but Alan Restrepo was the champion of, putting early bands out of Deep Ellum out and championing them and trying to share them with the world. And he was a champion for Pop Poppins on his label Carpe Diem. And he has since re-released and remastered a wonderful collection of our works, as well as Course of Empire on his new label. And I'll share all that stuff with you later. But
that stuff there's some stuff coming out around that pretty soon, huh?
Absolutely. We got pre-sales going on for a new Pop Poppins release with all of our old stuff from our first recordings all the way to our live recordings back in the day. And then Course of Empire has the same thing, re-released through his can't remember, something farm label that he's got now going on, but it's Carpe Diem. It's a Carpe Diem production, which he started in Dallas back in the day, and he's done one for Course of Empire too. And when he did those records, it later went to Zoo. When they bought it, they got it. They took it from him and took it from there. And I forget. I lost my train of thought taking that little tangent, trying to plug that stuff.
Well, we were talking though about the transition from Pop Poppins over into, and then we were talking about dual drummers for Course of Empire, and Chad was the second drummer.
Right. So when Chad took over, they had to ask Anthony Headley to leave, actually. It just wasn't working out, and Chad Lovell actually ends up recording everything on the first Course of Empire album and the second album, Initiation. Yeah, that's all Chad.
Yep. Got it.
And it wasn't until I joined up with the band, and years later, after we tour Initiation, it would be years later with John Fryer and Telepathic Last Words that I would record with the band.
Okay. Got it.
So, that was an incredibly difficult time, and so ever since, but it was an incredible time, but a difficult time because the band that I had finally wanted to be a part of, after we finished those tours, everybody came home to broken relationships, broken marriages. Everybody's relationship broke up after that tour.
Yeah.
And then the following years would be very difficult to get Telepathic Last Words made, as everybody was recovering from divorce and all that other stuff. So 96 and 97 were really difficult. And it's in those years that I started playing with Cottonmouth, Texas.
Yeah.
Playing with Jeff Lyles.
Yeah.
Who would lead me to meet Donnie Graves out here, which is why I know Richard Thompson and why I know my wife, Emma Stark.
That's so cool.
But there's so many connections in there that the band now, Course of Empire, that I'm finally playing with is not playing at all. We're busy making a record with under the most difficult circumstances, and working with a really well-known producer who was a prominent producer with 4AD Records and did everything from Cocteau Twins to Love and Rockets, and had done all these records that we loved, and now he's working with us, but he's only doing it because he happens to be in Dallas recovering from a divorce he was going through, staying with a friend. And those don't make really healthy conditions to like make a record,
Sure.
They're difficult conditions, and people were struggling to pay their bills at the time, and the conditions at the studio weren't good, so we had to rebuild the studio. We got dropped by the Zoo. We found another label, TVT in New York, and all this stuff happened, and it finally came out. But our singer was very clear that if the second single attempt did not take off, he was going to leave. And so by 98, the second single that was chosen didn't work. I think we bought into the commercial aspect of the business and chose a song that we all knew was just kind of goofy. We thought, why don't we try the most least likely song that we think is worth a shot?
Yeah.
And we'll pick that one because that's what radio tends to do. That was our attitude.
Right.
And we'll just go for it. And radio didn't even didn't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
And the singer said, that's it. And because he had told me 3 years prior that it wasn't something he really wanted to do in the first place. He just wanted to write poetry and live at home and kind of be more reclusive, and but keep his music and writing really to himself. He never wanted to be on stage. And he had told me that 3 years prior, which made the record kind of prophetic. And so it was no real surprise when the name of the album was Telepathic Last Words.
Yeah. Telling.
Very telling. But I loved the band. It was a powerful band. It's yet another band that if you were there, you were there, and
Yeah.
And there's nobody who ever saw Course of Empire that wouldn't tell you that. I mean, there's still people to this day that do that. They swear by that band.
Oh yeah, I've been out with you in Dallas. It shows, and people come up and they're not talking about Richard Thompson. They're not talking about Better Than Ezra. They're immediately going to Course of Empire.
Yeah.
So
they could care less about any of the other things that I did. But Course of Empire was it was special. I remember my mom and my sister actually came to those shows too, and they were just like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yeah. Yeah. Again, there is some YouTube footage out there that you can see some of this. And I could knowing your sister, I never met your mom, but knowing your sister, I could definitely see her posing that question.
They were just like, "Man, this is some crazy. This is just nuts." But it
You
was
mentioned
very
something.
good.
You mentioned something a minute ago, though. When you were in Course of Empire and you come back from this tour, and you come back to everybody kind of comes back to broken relationships, and you are one of the few musicians that I know of, and I don't know a ton of you guys that are professional, but I mean, you've been married to your wife Emma for a long time now. How do you manage that? How do you guys navigate, the craziness of, there's a lot of craziness I think that I've observed in the life of a professional musician. There's every year is a different year, right? Because you don't know which band or which group am I going to tour with, and how much are we going to tour, and what's that tour going to bring in terms of income, and then how do I supplement that with other, doing other projects, be it studio work or other tours with other bands. So how do you navigate that, and how important has Emma been in that relationship in your life as a support mechanism, or as a supporting partner to help you kind of get through these things?
Yeah, that. I think that's the $1,000,000 question in any relationship, but especially in our business and our profession, and any professional life, and any especially a professional life that requires a lot of time and distance apart from one another.
Yeah.
That puts incredible strain. But there's still the most incredible strain, the most intense and notable, noticeable strain on any relationship throughout the world tends to be financial stress.
Sure.
That will probably be most people's first top, top three of the list. And the distance is there are some partners that'll just tell you, like, I can't do distance. I just won't. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And you know where you stand right out of the chute. I just happened to marry someone that was my fit,
Yeah.
that fit my combination, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I never could have imagined being in a relationship when I was younger, being a touring musician. It was nothing at all. I just didn't think that was going to be possible. I didn't think that I'd ever find somebody who would be like, okay, yeah, okay, I get this. Sign me up.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But she was someone who, immediately spoke to my spirit first. And it was really easy for us to have conversations on many different levels. We could surface level stuff, and my wife, she can get deep really
Yeah.
quick. She doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, definitely not.
She's like, she likes real point blank in your face conversation.
Yeah.
And otherwise she's not bothered. I think, small talk in her,
Yeah.
not really her thing.
Right.
But I could, she'll suffer it. If she likes you enough, she'll do it,
Yeah.
and then she'll go for the juggler.
So how do you feel about, like, oh, wow, we're going to go there, huh?
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, great. All right. So let me just take off my clothes. And that was really refreshing at the time. But the main thing with her is she wasn't with me because I was in she could care less about any of the projects that I was doing. This was not her world at all.
Yeah.
She has been an incredible support. You know, she's been in every sense of the word partner.
Yeah.
She's been. Relationship is work. You know, it takes time. It takes energy to make a relationship work. It takes a sense of, you know, love and care. It takes care and respect,
Mm.
compassion, um, and you have to you have to have some sense of romanticism about it. You know, that just comes from respect. And I think at the end of the day, you want to try harder with somebody who's trying hard for you, and you're you should be. It it prompts you to be more uh, to pay more attention uh, to what is important to them.
Yep. Right.
And, you know, for some people, this is easier said than done. You know, some people's levels of empathy are much lower, you know,
Yeah.
than others.
Yeah.
But really, to keep a relationship, any relationship going there, you have to maintain a level of respect that keeps your uh, interest from waning or diminishing at all. Because as long as that respect is there, you're going to want to continue to try to uh, to find out what you know what interests them, you know, and you're going to want to figure out. Okay, let's sit down together and figure out what our goals are this year. What are
Yeah.
we both striving for now? And that way, you're making every day, month, and year something something new to strive for.
Yeah.
Because as time goes on, everybody knows that being in a relationship can go stagnant.
Yeah.
It can get stale, and you might find that you really need more time apart than you think. And with my profession, it's easier to keep respect high because I'm gone a lot.
Yeah.
I'm gone a lot.
Yeah.
And for my wife, that's a refreshing thing because she gets the bed to herself. She gets the car to herself. She gets to run her space
Yeah.
to herself. And about 3 weeks in, you know, you start missing, you're like, oh, I miss that guy.
Yeah.
But there are times where, you know, the pandemic put us together for the longest period of time ever in our relationship. I mean, I've been touring for 30 years, and
Right.
for the first 10 years of our relationship, I was gone. And it puts a pit in my stomach to think about it sometimes, how much time we spent apart. Because it's not normal. It's not conventionally, it's not how we're raised, and it's not a normal thing
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be in a relationship with someone and then not be around them.
Mm.
You know, you're living kind of a double life. You're out seeing the world and doing all these things that you thought you were going to do with your partner, and you're doing them alone or with somebody else, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And that's weird. That's weird. And there's not, I would say 9 times out of 10, uh, most people are not going to be able to deal with that. So it's they're very special people. I think military partners,
Yeah.
military wives, and musician wives, you know, there are business kids who grew up with their fathers on business, you know, 4 days out of the week, they were gone. And on
Yeah.
weekends, they were around, coach off. And that's how they grew up. But they were there, you know, they were a part of their life growing up. And that's what's different. This is a tough business, you know. And so without a partner like Emma and partners like her out there for people, it's impossible. It's impossible to sustain a relationship. So
Yeah.
in my case, I've been super, super lucky. was super lucky to find a partner that likes her space.
Yeah.
And is very honest about things, is a top communicator, and um, and is extremely supportive of what I do, and expects me to rise to the occasion. You
Yep.
know, expects me to be the best. And
Yep.
that's important too. So you got someone that's driving you,
Yeah.
and 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 furthermore, that you respect enough to want to, like, you know, to demonstrate that you can do it
Yeah.
for them. you know. Um, and so, yeah, I know there's a lot in that, but those are heavy questions.
I love
Those
that.
are,
I love that. I mean, I've seen, because we've been friends for a long time now, and I've fortunately had an opportunity to spend time not just with you, but with Emma and you guys together. And I've seen those things that you describe. I've seen them firsthand in your relationship. And um, I think another thing that you're right. Emma does have very much. She has things that she's passionate about that occupy her, that she wants to go chase, so that when you're not around, she's not just kind of sitting around wondering, well, what is he off doing? Or, he's getting to see parts of the world that I'm not getting to see right now. She's got either her artwork that she's doing, or her gardening that she's doing, or her friendships that she wants to go continue to pursue and build. So I think that seems like a pretty important dynamic in the relationship as well. Just the fact that she's got things that she is passionate about, that she's in pursuit of outside of the things that are core to your relationship together.
yeah. I mean, and it's really cool talking to you about it because you know her, and you know, she's in the garden right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's just like, it's really simple. She's got her routine. She's probably messing with some chickens right now. She's got gardens. So she's gonna come home with a basket of food. But she'll probably be back before the sun comes down, and that's it. Every day, her life is the garden now,
Yeah.
or something about a mushroom or something, and not the freaky ones, but she's looking for it. She's looking for mushrooms that she can cook up and won't kill you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been, the blessing has been being together long enough to see the different chapters in our lives.
Yeah.
For what we were when we first got together to what came, and someone who basically has been through all the fire, has been, come out the Phoenix more than once.
Yeah.
Just being with a dude like me.
I mean, look, as somebody that's a friend of yours, it's, don't sell yourself short. You're A plus. So,
we're all doing the best we can out here. That's for sure.
Right.
And
that's right.
it's funny.
Well, we didn't talk about, since you brought shrooms up, we didn't talk about the third mind, which is, which is, probably about as close to a shroom oriented, jam band, Grateful Dead-ish type vibe of anything that I've known you to play with. But I know that you guys did a record, or you've done a couple of records now. You did a tour earlier this year. What's any news on that front? Anything going to happen future state there that you're aware of?
Well, I'm going to kind of leak it out here. We just completed a live record just now from the recordings that we took from the board off of the West Coast tour.
Okay.
And that just got finished, and it's sounding really good. And I know we have plans to release that. I'm not sure if it's going to be this year or not.
Okay.
I think it is. We also have plans to record a third record, at the end of the year, hopefully we can get everybody's schedules lined up. The biggest problem with us has always been getting everybody in the same place at the same time because everybody's third mind is Dave Alvin. It's Victor Krummenacher and David Immergluck, Mark Karen, and Jesse Sykes. And we also have Willie Aaron on keys that usually joins us. We had a guy named Jack Rudy playing harp on first one as well. And Dave Alvin is Dave Alvin. I met him in 99.
Yeah.
Who, in his career is, he's tried and true SoCal, Downey, born and raised, guitar aficionado, gunslinger and guitarist. And is more known for his bands with the Blasters, but he's also played with X and Jimmy Dale Gilmore out in Texas, and his career is illustrious, and he's the well-known kind of master leader of the troupe. And David Immergluck is with Counting Crows, and we were blessed enough to have him play guitar on both albums. But we knew he was going to be a factor that wasn't going to be able to tour with us because of his situation with Counting Crows. Yeah. And so we were lucky enough to get Mark Karen, who's been with Bob Weir for years, and it's part of the kind of the Grateful Dead world. And his contribution in live shows has just been incredible. His sound, his guitar, his style of playing, just the perfect fit for the band. And Victor Krummenacher kind of helped bring this whole thing together from them talking with him, he and Dave talking about this project 10 years ago. Yeah, Victor has been with Cracker and Camper Van Beethoven, and I think that's how he knew David Immergluck. Yeah, makes sense. Back in the day, right. And there's Jesse Sykes, who's just been this well-known Seattle West Coast fixture for many years, and has done all sorts of eclectic things, from folk to touring to this early spring or late spring. She was out with Sun O, this really experimental sound oriented band that is known for lots of volume. And so she's no stranger to a band that's got dynamics, and she just brought her own unique taste and style to the vocal aspect of it, and kind of a balance to Dave's vocals when he decides to sing. Dave was just really clear and focused on wanting to be a band member for a change, which he's often has never really been able to do, and has always been kind of boxed into playing a certain style and singing and leading a band. And so this has been I know a gift for him. And so us being able to be a band at all is kind of a miracle. And we survived the pandemic, and we survived a bout with cancer that Dave made it through. And here we are looking at doing a third record and going into 2025, hopefully doing a whole lot more shows on the East Coast and Midwest. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's clearly not my kind of typical genre of music that I listen to, but I've listened to both of those albums. They're really good albums. I hated that I was out of town when you guys came through and played at the Kessler Theater in my neighborhood. But hopefully you guys will get out again at some point and I can catch that. So this summer you've got pretty much booked up with the Slash tour, is that right?
This summer is all Slash. We're rehearsing now. We'll tour from July 5 to August 17, actually ending in your territory. Yep. We'll be in Grand Prairie August 17th, and we'll end that tour. We'll finish there.
I'll definitely be at that show. We'll not be out of town at that one.
Yeah, that's going to be fun, and it'll be hot as hell, and we'll be looking forward to it.
I'm sure. Well,
I'm like,
you spent plenty of time. You did your time in Dallas. You're used to that. You're used to
man,
that.
I tell you, I'm just like, wow. And that it takes a certain amount of conditioning to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, we were raised in that. And that was when the clubs were full of cigarette smoke too.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know how we survived, but
No kidding. No kidding.
so it's going to be nice and hot. But then after that, I'm back with I'll join the BTE boys in September. And then I'll go back and finally support a record we made 3 years ago with Richard Thompson in the fall.
Okay.
It's from
Cool.
October 9 or so to November 9 or 10.
Okay.
And then we'll finish the year with Better Than Ezra Legends of the Fall tour.
Okay.
About November 15 on through mid-December before Christmas. And
That's been a fun little outing that you guys have done the last few years. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. I was hoping I said when we did the first year, I was like, I hope we need to keep this going. This needs to be something that happens. And it's going to be great this time because we'll do a rare thing and come out west with that tour.
Oh, nice.
For a change and play places like Arizona, which we often miss a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, man, I can't believe we've been talking for over 2 hours.
It's easy for us, man.
Yeah. It's been great though. I've enjoyed it. I know we've talked about some of these topics like one-to-one, but we also talked about some stuff that I learned new today. So
very good.
Appreciate you taking the time though, man. And you know how much I appreciate your friendship and getting
well, we love you, so that's it. If you remember, okay, you're the only conservative my wife will talk to.
I wasn't gonna bring it up. I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah.
You're the top of the list, and she's like, I love Jamie. That's it.
But that's a good lesson that people on very different sides of the political spectrum can have conversation and have true conversation and debate a topic and still like walk away from the conversation like loving and respecting each other. Like, so
absolutely
living proof that can happen. And I love the conversations that we have together about those things.
And she does too. And it's important. I mean, the world just loves to, case in point, I'll just be real quick about this. So after a show, I went out, was walking friends to their car in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And it was clear that some people were recognizing that I just got off stage, and there was a man out there with his little MAGA hat on, his little bright red me MAGA hat on. And he came up and he was like, hey man, did you just get off stage? And I was like, yeah. Is that what you have? And then we immediately started talking about drums. But in my peripheral vision, line of sight, I could see a crowd gathering. Now, often that happens because they're like, people, oh, there's a drummer. I'm going to see if I can have a chat and whatever. But then there were other people gathering around too. And I noticed that it wasn't just BTE fans.
Yeah.
It was a crowd that was forming to see if there was shit that was about to go down. Something was about to go down.
Yeah.
And because this tall black guy, or somewhere goes the drummer for Better Than Ezra is getting ready to throw down with MAGA hat man. And let me tell you what we talked about. The Rolling Stones, Creedence Clearwater,
there you go.
Our influences, country music, bluegrass, what we liked about it, its roots, the Anglo-Celtic influence, the roots of, Latin and drum rhythms and stuff like this. And, I was about, a foot and a half taller than this little old man.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it just kind of like fizzled off when people just we like ended up, all right,
no drama to be had here, right?
No drama. Sorry, guys. Sorry, folks. We ended up shaking hands and really enjoying our conversation about music. And that, once again, music proved to do what it's always done, and that's bring people together. and completely destroy boundaries and transcends borders. It transcends preconceived notions. It obliterates ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
It just is a wonderful thing, and more people really should engage in learning an instrument and listening to music and learning how to play music, more importantly, with other people that aren't like them. And music's the only way to do that.
Amen, man. Wise words. Couldn't agree more. Well, brother, man, thanks for taking the time today, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate you for taking the time, and let's catch up again soon, all right?
Yeah, that sounds good. Take
All
care,
right,
man.
brother. Peace.